What's the story, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? How are we all doing? How are we all getting on? How is the form? It is the football catch-up show. We're going to be looking back at all the weekends, All-Ireland Senior Football Championship action, and the weekend's Tailteann Cup action. And do you know what? Plenty of big talking points over the weekend. A lot of games, a lot of discussion points. Obviously, the Tailteann Cup groups have been wrapped up. The preliminary round draws happened as well, and we'll get onto that a little bit later. And yeah, some big talking points in the weekend's All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. Surprises, shocks, thrills, spills, controversial moments, absolutely everything, and very much in line with how the All-Ireland Football Championship has gone so far this year, where you couldn't say right now definitively who is your favourite for the All-Ireland, and I don't think you could say the same in the Tailteann Cup as well. You know, I think there's so many teams in the mix for both competitions, and that's what makes it so interesting, so fascinating. Of course, people will have their picks. People will say in the comments, this is who I think is favourites, and that's great, but I don't think everyone's going to be in line with that opinion. I think everyone's going to have a bit of a different opinion here, which I think is what makes this year's All-Ireland and Tailteann Cup so fascinating, in my opinion. But yeah, we're going to run through all of the games. We'll start with the Group 1 games, and then we'll eventually move into the Tailteann Cup a little bit later. For anyone who's new here, hit the like button and subscribe if you could. It helps the channel out massively. So let's get into it. Cavan 113, Donegal 326, and what a win. What a response for Donegal. And you know what? It's almost like as if Jim McGuinness and Donegal, they saw what happened yesterday with Mayo winning, and they realised that there's a chance for them to actually go from, you know, they started the day at the bottom of the group by the nature of only having played one game and having lost. But if they go and win and beat Cavan and actually put a bit of a beating on them, they can actually go top of the group. And that's kind of incredible to say after losing their opening game versus Tyrone. But yeah, it felt to me that Donegal wanted to win this game, but wanted to win it badly, or wanted to win it in terms of like a big margin. And you saw that towards the end of the game. Donegal scored 2-7 in the final 15 minutes. Cavan only scored 3 points in that stage. They didn't let off at all. Like, there was no easing of the batteries. There was no slowing down the engine. Like, they went full throttle for the full 70 minutes. And I think as well, I would say that Jim probably laid into the lads a little bit after the Tyrone defeat, albeit it wasn't the end of the world, and it wasn't actually the worst performance in the world from Donegal. They were just a little bit off it, I think, percentage-wise. But I think it was more so about how well Tyrone played. But yeah, Donegal were phenomenal. I think 8 or 9 different scores as well. All 6 starting forwards scored, which is very impressive. Shane O'Donnell, big performance from him at 1-4. Kieran Thompson, Michael Murphy getting 7 points as well. I actually saw that he got like a standing ovation as well when he came off. I think from a lot of the Cavan supporters as well, which was lovely to see, in fairness. For Cavan, it's a massive blow, massive blow, because for Cavan to have gone and done what they've done versus Tyrone and having beaten them, or Mayo, I should say, not Tyrone, they would that would have felt like the biggest win in Cavan football since that Ulster title win in 2020. And this weekend has just been a nightmare. Not just this game, but also what happened between Tyrone and Mayo, because it now brings Mayo back into it. And also as well, they now will have to play a Tyrone team on the final day that will need to win the game. Whereas previously Tyrone, had they have beaten Mayo, they could have switched off for that game and everything else. And Cavan then maybe would have got a shot at Tyrone when they didn't need to win a match. Whereas now that they do need to win the game, so that could be a massive problem. But yeah, to finish the game with 113 at home, like a lack of intensity as well. Like towards the end of the game, they just really struggled. They look leggy, they look tired. And it's disappointing from a Cavan perspective, because they've gone from being in a brilliant position to now bottom of the group. And look, if they beat Tyrone on the final day, they will go through, but that's going to be tough in a neutral venue as well. Their record against Tyrone in recent seasons hasn't been particularly brilliant as well, it must be said. So it 100% is there for Tyrone, and it's looking a little bit worrying for Cavan. But yeah, big response by Donegal, and without question, they're still in the mix for this All-Ireland. And despite that result of Tyrone, they are very much there. Tyrone 113, Mayo 217, and lads, as I said in the video I recorded yesterday, this was the most vintage Mayo thing ever, but also the most vintage Tyrone thing ever. Do you know what the thing is about both of these two counties? Neither of them like being the favourite. Both of them like being the underdogs. I feel like both of these two counties, they love being written off. They love being criticised. They love people talking shit about them. You know, and I feel like these are the type of players that literally hang the posters, the tweets on the wall of all the people criticising them. And Mayo have just gone and done it. It's literally the most Mayo week ever. I mean, to have their manager step down, and obviously we're all wishing him the best of health and everything else with Kevin McStay. And they've obviously had problems behind the scenes, financial troubles and everything else, which I'm not going to get into because I don't understand the full complexity of it. I haven't really properly looked into it as of yet. And it just felt like Mayo were literally like, I mean, the house of cards was tumbling. The only way Mayo were going to put things right was on the pitch, and they done that, and they were absolutely phenomenal in doing so. Aidan O'Shea with another big performance again. Again, just being such a vocal point, such a presence, sort of in that full forward line. You'd Ryan O'Donoghue doing his thing, scoring 1-6. But I think the most impressive thing for Mayo is the new players who came in. The likes of Conal Dawson and Davit Neary both made a big impact in this game for Mayo. And that's the thing, is that we know Mayo have some good players in Ryan O'Donoghue, Matthew Rowan, obviously Paddy Durcan being back in the side, and he was very impressive. But Mayo haven't really been able to introduce any newer players in the last couple of years. It feels like it's still the same crop that got to the final, the All-Ireland final in 2021. They haven't really been able to introduce many other new players since then. So the fact they have been able to get these lads in is a big praise for Mayo. And look, it's going to be tough for them versus Donegal, and there could be a world where maybe they lose to Donegal and Tyrone win, and that would actually see Mayo out because of the head-to-head record with Cavan. So they probably will need something versus Donegal, because they can't be relying on Cavan to actually do them a favour versus Tyrone, in my opinion. So it's not, you know, all rosy in the garden yet for Mayo. It'll be a very tough game against Donegal, in my opinion, and I would be surprised if they did go and actually win that or even get something from it. But Mayo are not gone. Mayo are still there, and look, they'll enjoy being written off going into Donegal. Let me tell you that. As for Tyrone, it is a setback. It's disappointing from their performance. It's the inconsistencies that keep following them around. But ultimately, look, they play Cavan on the final day, a game I absolutely think that they can win. As long as they win that, then they are through, and that's the most important thing for Tyrone. And there is still a good chance as well that they actually win this group, because if Donegal beat Mayo, Tyrone will have the head-to-head record with Donegal, and that will see them win the group. So I would say a win versus Cavan should see them win the group. But obviously it will depend on what happens in that Donegal and Mayo game. And of course there is a scenario as well where Mayo win the group. So it's all to play for going into the final round of matches, and that's absolutely brilliant to see. Moving on to Group 2 then, and we'd Cork 20 points, Kerry 128. Very comfortable in the end. An 11-point win for Kerry. Bit of a scare in the first half. Kerry were struggling a little bit. They had a couple of injuries. Paul Gainey goes off injured. Paddy Clifford goes off injured. And Barry Dan O'Sullivan went off injured as well. So it was all sort of lining up very nicely for Cork. And Cork, again, like they so often do, were performing brilliantly in the first half versus Kerry, and once again causing problems for Kerry, as they so often seem to do in recent years. Brian Hurley was having a phenomenal game. Mark Cronin was involved. Paul Walsh, I thought, was having a very good game as well. But then in the second half, it was like it all just sort of tumbled away. And the most bizarre thing is, I put out a tweet at half-time, sort of just a bit of a funny tweet, to be fair, just saying that the Cork footballers, every time that they play Kerry, you know, sort of comparing them a little bit to, you know, they turn into Spain, they turn into prime Brazil when they play Kerry. They were absolutely atrocious in that second half, and I absolutely jinxed them. I don't know what it is with me and jinxing teams. It happens all the fucking time. Yeah, Cork were dreadful in that second half. Very worrying second half performance. I know I backed originally Roscommon to finish bottom of this group, but I actually think Roscommon will beat Cork in a couple of weeks' time now. I think Cork just have the look of a team, to me, that's at the end of this project under John Cleary. You know, they don't seem to have a lot of fight in them, a lot of spirit in them. They rolled over towards the end of the game versus Meath, and they rolled over massively in this game as well. Like, it was so comfortable for Kerry. And don't get me wrong, Kerry are a phenomenal side. You saw the Sean O'Shea 2-pointers, some brilliant 2-pointers there. David Clifford scoring some absolutely brilliant points as well. And look, obviously there were some, you know, rule infringements and everything else that went against Cork. But yeah, Kerry were very good in my opinion. And they brushed aside Cork with absolute ease in the second half, and having struggled as much as they did in the first half, to then produce that in the second half, that was very impressive from Kerry. And the thing is with Kerry is that they are the All-Ireland favourites, according to most bookies. They are the favourites and everything else. And you do understand it. I mean, look, they won the All-Ireland, you know, three seasons ago, come June or July, when the All-Ireland final comes around. They got to the semi-finals last year, the final the year before that. They seem the most consistent out of all the big teams, to be fair. But what you would say is that, you know, we'll get on to the likes of Armagh, and we obviously mentioned Donegal. Maybe we'll discuss Galway as well. But, you know, all those teams other than Kerry have faced big teams. They've faced tougher levels of opposition than what Kerry have had to face. And it's hard to really know with Kerry. We won't really know the answers with Kerry until they actually face a big team. They're certainly one of the All-Ireland contenders, but I wouldn't say that they're favourites just yet, in my opinion. I would probably actually be looking more towards Armagh as the favourites right now, and we'll get onto that in a moment. There's still vulnerabilities in that Kerry side, and you saw at times the goal chances that Cork were able to create, and the fact that they didn't end up with more than one goal in this game was kind of bizarre in more ways than one. But look, Kerry do have the players there. Maybe, we'll see what happens with Paddy Clifford. Obviously, he's kind of been in and out this year with injuries. But look, Kerry will be there. We definitely know that. And what I would say is that the team that probably beats Kerry, if there is a team that beats Kerry this year in the championship, is probably going to be the team that wins the All-Ireland. That's been the case in the last 2 years. Armagh beat them in the semis, went on to win Sam. And the year previous, obviously, Kerry lost in the final. So it is looking a little bit like the team that beats Kerry, if there is a team that beats them, probably will win the All-Ireland this year. Roscommon 2-15, Meath 21 points. It was an interesting game. Like, Meath had a big lead, I think, at halftime. With obviously they were playing into the breeze in that first half. Some lovely 2-pointers from the likes of Connor Duke, James Conlon, and Brian Menton. And Meath were very impressive in this game, in my opinion. Like, when you actually look at their starting 15, they had 9 scores from their starting 15. So some spread of different scores across the team. And look, the most impressive thing about Meath is that they're a young side. They have young players in James Conlon and Owen Frayne, Connor Duke. These lads, like, they're all young players. Matthew Costello, young footballers. And to think of where Meath were this time a year ago when Meath were in the group stages, they were the absolute whipping boys. They were getting beat left, right, and centre, an absolute ease, and they were absolutely just no hopers, to be honest with you. Robbie Brennan has absolutely turned them around. And yes, there is that thing of them not getting over the line in Leinster, but they've had a very, very good start to these group stages. To beat Cork, to get a draw with Roscommon, it's looking almost nailed on that they will go and finish in second place. For Roscommon at the same time, look, there are some negativities there with not being able to get over the line in this game, but at the same time, they did fight back, and they did show some spirit in the second half, which will give them a little bit of confidence. Ben O'Carroll obviously getting a goal, which was great to see. I thought German Murtha had a very good game as well, scoring 1-4. It's hard to know what Roscommon where they really are at. What I would say is that if they can play to this same ability versus Cork, I think they will have enough to get out of the group. I know there is that sort of the game against Cork a couple of years ago in the preliminary round that sort of scarred Roscommon going into the quarters, but it is a massive game for the Rossies, because if they win that, depending on score difference, they could end up finishing second, but Meath do have the better of the score difference right now. Obviously, they are playing Kerry on the final day, but it's not, hope isn't all lost for Roscommon, but it does feel like all or nothing now in that game versus Cork. Moving on to Group 3, you Down 25 points, Louth 24 points, and what a win for Down. Again, you're looking at Meath and sort of the progress that they've made over the last sort of 12 months, and Down, serious progress here to get 2 wins at the start of the group stages. I mean, they must be absolutely rubbing their hands together. The fact that Down are already through is quite incredible, and at a bare minimum, they will finish second. Yes, look, the group and the fixture list was very kind to them, playing Clare away in the opening day, and then obviously getting Louth at home as well. It's been very favourable to Down, but you can only, beat what's in front of you, and you can only do your own job. And to be fair to Down, they've absolutely done that. They beat Clare at an absolute canter. And this was a big win as well versus Louth. And it was an interesting game because Down were leading by 11 points at one stage, kind of closing in on halftime. There was a hugely favourable breeze that favoured Down in the first half. And Louth obviously were able to exploit that as well in the second half. The likes of Oren Murdoch, Pat Haver, scoring some incredible 2-pointers to send Down very, very far ahead. And it was looking worrying for Louth because not only were they about to lose, but they were going to be on the receiving end of an absolute hammering. But you knew with the players that they have in Tommy Durnan and Samuel Roy, in Ger Brennan as a Louth manager, was not going to let a lead like that sort of just eat away at them. They were going to come back and make a real fight at it. And they did, to be fair. They didn't come back in the end, but they came as close as you can. They brought it down to a 1-point game at one stage. And that block at the end by one of the Down defenders, like, absolutely colossal stuff. Talk about putting your body on the line. Absolutely incredible stuff there for Down. And look, it's great to see. In my opinion, as a neutral, I like to see new teams kind of come up and make a rise and everything else. Down is a county with so much history and tradition when it comes to football. Multiple times they've won All-Irelands. They won 2 in the 90s. One of the most successful teams from Ulster as well in terms of All-Ireland wins. So Down football, it's great to kind of see them back in the mix. And, at the very minimum, they're going to get a preliminary qualifier. And look, they actually are going into the final game against Monahan in a very good position. Like, even a draw would see them win that group and go straight through to a quarterfinals. Like, what an achievement that would be for Down football. And look, it's a free hit versus Monahan as well, in my opinion. And if they can get something from that game and go in straight into the quarterfinals, like, what a story that would be for Down. For Louth, it's back-to-back defeats, and it is a little bit disappointing. Look, the fixture list was tough for them, playing Monahan in the opening day and then going away to Down in Newry. It was always going to be tough. Conditions were tough as well, to be fair. Look, all is not lost. I would expect them to beat Clare and at least go into the preliminary qualifiers. The problem will be they will have an away game, and you're looking at some of the potential second-place teams as well. There's some tough games there that Louth could get. But I think at the bare minimum, you would expect them to beat Clare. In saying that, though, Clare did give Monaghan quite a game, and it was Monaghan 125, Clare 116. And in fairness to Clare, like they gave this as good as you could have. I mean, they fell apart in the second half, but in the first half they were very, very good. Once again, a very kind of common trend throughout a lot of these games with the weather at the weekend, very bipolar weather. There was a very favourable breeze that favoured Clare in the first half and obviously favoured Monaghan in the second half. But Clare were leading by 8 points at one stage towards the end of the first half. Aaron Griffin, very impressive, scoring 1-3. Owen Cleary, Mark McInerney, very good as well. Con Meaney actually did a very good game. Couple of brilliant 2-pointers there. And you were thinking, like, especially when you were looking at the score, like on Score BO and everything else, you were thinking, surely Clare aren't going to pull off the mother of all shocks here. And what on earth is happening with Monaghan? Just 6 points in the first half. Very disappointing from their perspective. But they scored 119 in the second half. And Conor McCarthy stepping up with a brilliant goal. And it was really from that point where Monaghan absolutely took over and dominated the game. Micheál Bannigan with 3 points. Stephen O'Hanlon with 2 points. Jack McCarran, very good with 8 points as well. And a very impressive performance in the second half from Monaghan to turn it around. Look, I think the first half performance, probably a few things went into it. The conditions definitely played its part. Maybe a little bit a bit of complacency with the fact that they were playing Clare, who just got an absolute hiding versus Down, and maybe Monaghan didn't feel like they had to be at their best. But they turned it around, and a big second half showing to win the game, and it leads them in a good position now going into the final game versus Down. For Clare, I mean, it does give them a little bit of confidence, at least that first half performance. Like, it gives them a little bit of hope going in versus Louth. Although, in the end, they you look at the scoreline, they lost it quite comfortably in the end. And I think they only scored like 3 points in the second half or something like that. But the first half performance will give them a bit of confidence. I think the problem is that you saw it Down. Once Down went to town on them, they rolled over. Once Monaghan went to town on them in this game, they rolled over as well. So it's very hard to see them getting anything versus Louth, but we'll wait and see what happens. Moving on to Group 4, and we Derry 220, Galway 414, and goodness me, what a game this was. Game of the weekend, without question. I saw the first half of this game when I was, sort of in the pub, like before going into Croke Park to watch the Armagh match, and I have obviously since watched the highlights back and everything else. This was a mental game, and fair play. I think credit has to go to both counties. Firstly, for Derry, for once again standing up and looking more like the Derry that we know and that we've seen over the last couple of years. And then fair play to Galway from battling back from 6-7 points down. Had they have lost this game, they would have been out of the championship as well. And it was actually, watching Galway, it was almost sort of reminiscent of Derry last year at times, where you're kind of just scratching your head and you're thinking, we know that the talent and the quality that's within this Galway team, but like they just looked miles off the pace. Defensively, they were getting cut open left, right, and centre. They were struggling going forward as well. A bit of an over-reliance on goals. And some of the goals they scored as well were probably some of the most flukiest goals I've ever seen. And I think there is a strong point that Galway got a little bit fortunate to come out of this with a draw. And they can count their sort of lucky stars that they're still in this championship, because I thought Derry were miles the better side. Conor Glass, again, a bit like the last game versus Armagh, very impressive, 1-3 from him. But Derry are just looking a bit more like Derry again, like Noel Loughlin with 1-2. Very impressive. Kieran McFall scoring a big point in the game as well. Paul Cassidy looking very impressive. Even Lakeland Murray as well, coming off the bench, scoring 2 points. And, a lot of these lads like Lakeland Murray, Paul Cassidy, Noel Loughlin, they've all just sort of gone off the grid this year for Derry. We haven't heard too much about them. Oh, McAvoy as well. They've all just been very silent. They're very quiet. So this was brilliant for Derry. At the same time, though, they'll be absolutely kicking themselves. They'll be relieved that they got that point at the end to level the game up, having been so far ahead and looking like they were going to lose the game. But that goal at the end, I mean, the ball just bobbling around the place before it eventually being fisted in by Matthew Tierney. And even one of the goals they conceded in the first half as well, I think the Robert Finnerty goal, like the ball just bobbling and bouncing all over the place and deflecting and finding a way in. It was like something you nearly see out of FIFA. Do you know what I mean? Just really, really disappointing there for Derry. But look, they're still in it. They'll take confidence from their performance in the last 2 games. They're creating goal chances. They're scoring goals as well. They still haven't won a game in almost a year. But look, going into the final game versus Dublin in a neutral venue, I think that game is going to be in Clones from what I've heard. That will probably suit Derry more so than it will suit Dublin. And it's not inconceivable that Derry beat Dublin. And they're still in it. They're still there. And even as a Dublin fan, like looking at how Derry have performed over the last 2 games, Derry is a team that have beaten Dublin in the league, over the last couple of seasons. Like there is a little bit of concern there. There is a little bit of a worry with this Derry side that they are kind of starting to click maybe under Paddy Tally. And you do feel like a big win is coming. I'm just hoping we can silence that. We can be the ones to beat them and then put ourselves through. But what a massive game that's going to be in a couple of weeks. As for Galway, I can't really put my finger on where it's going wrong. Defensively, they seem to be really struggling. Whether it's the new rules that's affecting them, I'm not entirely sure. Like Shane Walsh finishes the day with a goal, but aside from that, was very, very quiet again and doesn't seem to be playing to his best. And they just couldn't really get their forwards into it. Robert Finnerty with 1-3, Damien Comer with just a single point. And like if it hadn't been for players like Matthew Thompson and even Cian Darcy as well, who I thought had a very good game coming off the bench, Galway could have been in massive trouble. And to think that they could have exited the championship, the team I've predicted to win it, that's probably why they're in this mess. But yeah, like for Galway, massive work needs to be done. The good news for them is they're playing Armagh, who are already through in the final game. And look, maybe Armagh might want to stick it to Galway and just kind of, beat them again as they so often seem to do since that penalty shootout in 2022. But yeah, they are playing an Armagh team that's already through, so at least that's good for them. And the last game, Dublin 19 points, Armagh 24 points. As I said on my stream last night, I was at this game in Croke Park, and yeah, Dublin would just drive you mad. They drive you bananas. I wanted to just run into a wall watching Dublin, to be honest with you, because the amount of chances that we missed, I mean, 16 wides from open play, 17 wides in total. Like it was just so poor shooting wise from Dublin. It was panic shooting as well. Some would say we created more scoring chances than Armagh, but that's because Armagh didn't need to score towards the end of the game, so they were keeping the ball. And also as well, Dublin were just shooting from ridiculous angles and sort of panicking in the moment. And we do have experienced leaders within that team in Kieran Kilkenny and Cormac Costello. But aside from that, there has been a massive change of the guard with Dublin over the last couple of years. And we missed Con big time, in my opinion. And there was just a lot of poor performances there, it must be said, from a Dublin perspective. For Armagh, this wasn't the best Armagh. And I say that, as a compliment. They still have another level to go up on, which is what I think makes them even more dangerous. Having Rian O'Neill back, who scored 3 2-pointers, but 2 of them from play, and they were absolutely gorgeous as well. The one with the outside of his boot in the first half, the glider in the second half as well, like just incredible. And to have him back is such a plus for Armagh. It really, really is. And you know what? Like looking at it in terms of All-Ireland favourites, I'm starting to genuinely think Armagh might go back-to-back, to be honest with you. I really do, because they're looking more of a seasoned team now. There's a maturity about this Armagh team that wasn't there a couple of years ago. And getting over the line last year, I think, has massively helped them in these games. And they're able to close these games out. They never really ever looked like losing this. It wasn't like they were kind of hanging on towards the end. You felt like if this game went on for an extra 10, 15 minutes, Armagh would have won the game comfortably even after. And the fact that Armagh can go to Croke Park, win very comfortably, it's not even a big fuss, not even a big celebration at full time. I think Armagh are the real deal. And look, I think it's been a long time since we saw an Ulster team win back-to-back All-Irelands. I genuinely think it could happen. I really do. Maybe the only teams that can stop them is Kerry, maybe Donegal, because Donegal seem to have their number in recent years. But Armagh are a serious, serious team. When you have Rory Grugan chipping away with 8 points, Stephen Campbell again being the super sub, like they have so much. Joe McElroy with a brilliant point as well. Armagh are looking very, very good. And, I remember making a video a couple of years ago talking about Armagh being dangerous. They look even more dangerous now, it must be said. And the fact that they do have another level to go up on as well, I think is what makes it worrying. I think Armagh could do it. They genuinely could do it. Looking at the Tailteann Cup, and we'll just throw the groups up on the screen. And Group 1, you'll see there, Kildare with 6 points, Sligo with 4 points. Kildare beat Sligo 419 to 124. And Leitrim did beat Tipperary 3-9 to 10 points. A very commanding win for Kildare there. I think they have to be the favourites, in my opinion, for this tournament right now. And if they don't win it, I think something has gone wrong, in my opinion. Disappointment from Sligo. Look, they are already through, and they'll go through as a preliminary home team as well, which will suit them. And Leitrim, massive win for them. Unfortunately for Leitrim, they actually don't go through because they are the worst placed third place team, and New York are the other team who come in there. So disappointing for Leitrim that they didn't go through, but a positive sign to finish on a win. And do let me know, for Leitrim fans who are watching, do you keep Stephen Poacher going into next year? Do you change the management team and everything else? You ended the season on a little bit more of a high, but I don't know. Like, do you trust that management team to get you out of Division 4 next year? Because I think there is a team there that under the right management and under the right stewardship can get out of Division 4. So be curious to know your opinion. In Group 2, you had Offaly 316, Laois 318, and Wicklow 329, Waterford 21 points. As you'll see there, 3 teams all finishing with 4 points, and Wicklow actually going through as the group winners in the end, which is huge for Wicklow football to win that group and go through as group winners, and go straight into the quarterfinals and have a seeded draw as well will massively suit them, in my opinion. And it's kind of lucky for them how it probably all worked out with score difference and everything else. And to think as well, like that, those couple of extra goals that they got that they probably didn't need in the end was the difference between them finishing first and third. Big win for Laois as well to go and beat Offaly. Offaly have been looking like one of the contenders this year as well. Slight setback for them. They are playing, I think, New York in the next game, so I think they should come through that fairly comfortably. But a little bit of disappointment there from an Offaly perspective, and a big win for Laois. But they would have been raging, like, to have won that game against Offaly, still finished third, and now have to face Westmeath in the preliminary qualifiers as well. Like, they'll be raging about that. But at the same time, big win here for Laois. In Group 3, in Westmeath 18 points, Limerick 19 points, and London 114. Antrim 122. Firstly there, Limerick, what a win to beat Westmeath. Like, that is some story in a neutral venue as well for Limerick to have gone and won that game. Fair play to Limerick football. Again, a bit like Wicklow, straight through to a quarterfinals, beating one of the contenders as well, in my opinion, in Westmeath. For Westmeath, a little bit of disappointment. It's hard to know like where it's kind of they obviously got relegated from Division 2 fairly handily, but I thought they ended the kind of groups, or they ended the league on a little bit more of a high. And a disappointing loss here, it must be said. There obviously has been a change in the players and everything else, and it's hard to know. You would look at Kildare, Offaly, maybe even Laois is probably more kind of closer in terms of contenders as this Westmeath side, but massive win for Limerick. And I think it's fair to say Jimmy Lee is really getting a kick out of this Limerick team now. And they're a dark horse for this competition, in my opinion. In Group 4, with Fermanagh 25 points, Wexford 115, and Longford 120, Carlow 115. Longford are already gone, no matter what the storyline was of this game. At the same time, good for Longford and for Mike Solon to get a win on the final day, albeit it doesn't mean anything, and it'll be interesting to know if he's still there next year. Do let me know, Longford fans, as well, what you think will happen there. And Fermanagh, big win versus Wexford. Saw bits of this in Croke Park, it must be said. Fermanagh lads out on the beer as well. I love that there was a pocket of Fermanagh fans leaving Croke Park as we were going in, and about 20 or 30 of them straight into the bar. Absolutely love that, to be fair. It's like, game is done. We don't care about watching Dublin Armagh. Couldn't give a toss about that. Let's just go and have a point. Respect that. And to be fair, more than deserved after this win as well. And to think, Fermanagh lost to Carlow, and it was worrying signs, but with the way that the group has gone, they've won their next 2 matches, and they've won this game, and it's been enough to see them win the group, and that's obviously huge for Fermanagh. Speaking of the Tailteann Cup preliminary kind of quarterfinal, as we were mentioning previously, so it's Offaly versus New York, it's Sligo versus Carlow, it's Wexford versus Antrim, and Westmeath versus Laois. I think the most interesting draw there is Westmeath versus Laois, 2 teams that know each other very well, rivals and everything else, Midlands derby if you want to call it that. That'll be an interesting game, and 2 kind of contenders there coming up against each other, and I kind of fancy Laois, to be honest with you, to do it, but that's going to be a very interesting game, and hopefully we will be able to see that. Great to see New York, obviously, in the Tailteann Cup as always. Tough game for them versus Offaly. There probably wasn't an easy game for them, to be fair. Sligo versus Carlow, you would expect Sligo to come through, and Wexford versus Antrim will be an interesting one as well. But anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Do let me know your thoughts, your opinions on the weekend's games. Comment down below your thoughts, your man of the matches on some of these different games. And until the next one, we'll speak to you all later. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Speak to you later.